Welcome to another episode of CEO Story, where we bring the life story of a person who has achieved the status of CEO, of Chief Executive Officer of his or her organization. And today we have with us Mr. Ramesh Shanmuganathan, who is formerly the CEO of Keels Business Systems Limited, KBSL, and now serves as the Executive Vice President of John Keels Holdings and is the CIO of the group. Welcome, Ramesh, to the program.
Thank you, Yukti. Thanks for having me here.
Ramesh, to start off, what are the recollections of your childhood? Was it a carefree time for you?
Yeah, I think it was because born into a family of 5 with 3 siblings, and maybe the youngest, obviously I had a carefree life to say. But I was not the one who was born with a silver spoon, so to speak. Very average family, working parents. Dad was the administrative services, mom was a teacher, and born and bred in Colombo. So which actually gave me a lot more breadth in terms of, because both sides, my mom and dad had quite a big family, 7 siblings each. So we got a huge network of cousins to grow up with, which I enjoyed every bit of it. And I think having to share things with such a big family obviously brings you to bear in terms of how to make yourself or felt in a crowd, and to stand out and to be counted. And I guess that's something I've enjoyed, play hard, work hard, ethic which had been taught by my parents and which I live to date.
Right, and it's quite easy to put a team of 11 together to play cricket.
Easily. So. Because our holidays always had been a pleasant one, because we regroup in Jaffna during our vacation, and it's easily we can field about 2-3 teams, cricket teams, to have fun.
Ramesh, moving along to your youth and your days in school, how was it like, and were you one of those people who got involved in every society that there was? Or?
Right. I started off schooling at Hindu College, where my mom taught up until about grade 5, then moved on to Royal College through the admission test. Couple of things that I've enjoyed when I was a youngster is I always have been a guy who pushed the boundaries. And my initial probably period in school wasn't, I would say I was academically good, but not excelled as such until I got to the latter parts of the years in grade 8s and 9s. But I felt that, this is something that I need to take a bit more seriously and push the boundaries. And I started scoring A's and topping the class. So in terms of, as you know, in Royal, things are very competitive. It's very difficult to balance the act between academic and the extracurricular. So I loved playing tennis and rugby, never made it to the school teams, but did my own stuff on my personal time, but excelled pretty well in my studies. And I got involved into the extracurricular activity, so to speak, in the Carnatic music, Tamil literature, those kind of things, which also gave me a breadth in terms of scoring the extra points in earning my prefectship as well. So it's been a pretty good experience, but and also the experience at Royal taught me that, especially when you have a diverse community and a diverse, when you have in a grade, when you have 600 students, you really need to compete and make the mark. So that really, I think, brought the competitiveness in me, even when vying for a position in a society or even the prefectship. And I think that prefectship experience per se gave me a lot in terms of confidence that I can, if I put my mind to something, that I can achieve it. So that's, I think, was something that which has grown from strength to strength as I grew older.
Ramesh, you shared with us that you also played tennis and rugby. Are there any parallels? Because many people draw parallels between sports and business.
Yeah, I think it is, because unfortunately, one is a team sport, one is not, right? But I think one thing that you always, when you're playing a game, you always tend to learn from others, right? I used to look up to Borg and the Connors and the Wimbledon players of that era. And my dad used to play tennis as well. So as a kid, I used to go with him to the club, watch him play. Then I took on the liking to the sport. But later on in life, when I moved on to the universities, where I actually played for the university rugby, so it wasn't that we were kind of pro ruggerized, but we played B division, right? And one of the matches I remember, we went and took on the Planters, and these guys are hefty guys, right? And we are kind of no match to them in terms of might. And I actually got a really bad tackle, and I was off for about 3 weeks, bedridden, couldn't even laugh, my ribs waking. But things that taught me was that even in a team sport, sometimes we don't look at the strengths of the teammates in playing, right? Sometimes you tend to be an individual even in a team sport, and that's what probably brought me down. And you tend to learn a lot from a team sport as well as sports, which you can bring back to your business in terms of strategies, in terms of how you could get the best out of people, and to really leverage skills around you.
Moving on more to your career after school. So what kind of qualifications did you go for after your
Right, I think as I grew up, one of my role models was my uncle, because I got on to develop a huge interest in electronics and stuff earlier on in life, even when as a 7-8-year-old kid, because my uncle used to repair these old radios which were made out of valves, right? So that intrigued me a lot. So even as a youngster, I made up my mind I'm going to be an engineer. So all my choices in terms of double maths physics, then I ended up going to University of Moratuwa, where I qualified as an electronics engineer. So even when I finished that, while I was in university, I always looked at, do I want to be just another engineer, or do I want to do something different? So as I graduated, I started my MBA at PIM, right, which a lot of people thought that I was off my head to start a PIM, an MBA soon after graduating. And even at the PIM, when I faced the interview, there was a gentleman who was in the panel who said, "Hey, engineers are lousy managers. Well, what makes you think that you're going to be different?" I said, "I'm different, and I would like to prove you wrong," right? Because one of the things which brings out the best in me is if someone challenges me. I would like to kind of take it as a thing to say that it's not beyond me. So from that point, I think I've joined DMS Electronics as my first job, where I did about a 3 to 4 year stint. Right. Then I got a scholarship, the Fulbright, and ended up going to US to do my master's in computer science and IT. So which had a 2-year residential requirement as well. So a lot of the guys asked, "Hey, you went to US, why did you come back?" So when I came back, I had a couple of offers, and KBSL's thing looked appealing, because I had a dream of setting up an SI company. Okay. So in KBSL at that time, CEO was Keith Modder, who's currently with Virtusa. So he brought me the idea and said, "Hey, looks like a good thing, why don't you set it up?" So for me, that was kind of someone gave me a free hand, and kind of not really a blank check, and said, "Hey, go after your dream." And that for me was a turning point in my career, that I had an early opportunity to live my dream. And and the support of Keith, Ajit Gunawardena, who was that time sector head for IT, who were guiding me and coaching me to push the boundaries and take KBSL, transform a KBSL from a PC-based company into a solutioning SI company. So that gives enormous confidence, and probably the qualifications that, obviously I look at qualifications as a passport, not as a necessary stamp of visa into entry, and that helped in driving the transformation at KBSL as well.
Ramesh, was there any point in your career where you told yourself, "Hey, I can be head of this organization one day"?
Right. I think I think that wasn't. I didn't have to wait too long, because I think 1 year into KBSL, Keith, for whatever reason, thought that he would make a career move for the better into Virtusa. And at that point in time, the slot for the CEO position at KBSL was open. So I had, hey, I don't think it's going to be a thing beyond me. So I just went and had a chat with Ajit and said, hey, I'd like to take this on. So he said, you're too young to take this on. So I said, fine, but I still feel convinced that I can take this on. So after a couple of months, he called me and said, hey, if you can transform this company, I'll give you a 12-month period. Show me what you're capable of. Then let's talk about it. So I was made the acting CEO for about 8 or 9 months. And during that period, or what we agreed in terms of the transformational steps which needs to happen, got executed. And the company was back in good shape. So then I was appointed as a CEO. So which for me was that even in adversity, there is opportunity, but you need to believe in yourself. And I think that belief and being able to earn the credibility of your subordinates, because even in adverse conditions, ultimately your people need to believe in you, your superiors need to believe in you. And if you can't establish the credibility, it's tough to get going. And I think definitely that I always did not stop short of, pushing the boundaries, as I said. And this opportunity was not planned for, but came in an unexpected way.
You were CEO at a very relatively young age. So what did it feel like to be heading an organization when you're so young? Even your bosses sort of commented on that.
It is. I think it's a pretty good feeling, and also it's daunting at times, because at that juncture, when PC business was kind of disintegrating around you, and when you have 240 people working for you, you know that you're responsible for the lives of 240 people, and the organization, and to sustain it and transform it in a more meaningful and less painful manner for all concerned. So it's a huge responsibility, come to think of it, and sometimes you tend to think, hey, is this worth it? Is it kind of doable? What if things go wrong? All kinds of questions pop up. But then the consolation is that that if you come out of it unscathed, everyone is going to benefit out of it, and that's something which pushed me to keep going and stay focused. But the pressures at time was daunting during the initial phase, and I think it's a good feeling to be on top. But only issue is that I always tell my staff as well, the higher you go, the more lonely you get. So you got to keep yourself motivated, because there's no one else to come and motivate you. So you got to put up with the miseries, keep a happy face, keep a smiley face, because if you sulk, the entire organization will sulk. So you need to keep the bright face in middle of whatever challenges that you're facing, and bat on.
Great. In terms of you look back at your career, and you're still in the IT field and still holding a leadership position as CIO of the group. What are the challenges that you've had? And if you look at, say, maybe your successes and failures, have you had any? Or I mean, in terms of
I've always definitely I had my share of failures, but I would normally look at it as a learning opportunity, not as failures, because I always a firm believer that if you don't fail, that means you're not pushing yourself enough, right? Then you're in your comfort zone. Maybe you're not taking enough risks, and you're not looking at enough things to probably latch on to. So one of the things that major setback that we had was when I was at KBSL, we were trying to bring Nokia into Sri Lanka on the infrastructure side, where Alcatel, Ericsson's were dominating in the mobile operator space. So I went up to Ajit and said, hey, there is this fantastic opportunity. He said, so if you're convinced, you talk to these guys and give us a proposal. So we flew to actually Singapore during the SARS outbreak, right? So even that didn't bother us, because we thought this is a gold mine that we need to wrap up. So we flew in the team of 4 guys. We went and presented got the business dealership for Sri Lanka, for Nokia. And then we're very kind of upbeat that we are going to kind of wipe Ericsson's and the Alcatraz out of the market. So because we have the good relationships, we got the corporate touch as well. But little did we anticipate that the late entrants like Huawei and ZTE would come with a price so ridiculous that we won't be able to even stand, let alone sitting. And we were decimated in terms of all the big deals that we went with bids. They were kind of 1/10 of our price. And Nokia coming from European and quoting in euros, and these guys quoting in yuan with government financing and all of that. So that was a major setback and a learning in terms of not looking into and putting into context emerging threats and emerging economic hubs like India and China now who are becoming mainstream, because I think in another couple of years, obviously China is going to overtake US as the biggest economy, and India probably would be the third. So it's a good learning lesson and a good opportunity now sitting between India and China. I think we're sitting in a gold mine, so to speak, if we can tap the potential of those two countries as well. So that was one of the major setbacks which kept me pondering as well in terms of why didn't we see this coming, So one of the critical, I think, skills that you need to develop as a CEO is also to look at future and emerging opportunities and threats, not only from a country perspective, from a regional context as well. And that's something that we missed out in a big time. And I think that's documented as a key learning thing at John Kids as well, that project per se.
Right. Great. In terms of people management, what is your approach, Ramesh?
Yep, I've probably learned along the way because I personally am a very highly opinionated person, and a lot of people feel that talking to this guy is not going to make sense, right? And they tend to give up. So I kind of reflected on these things because I very frequently have the 360 degrees and this team building exercise, solicit feedback from people. So I did realize that the way sometimes I question puts people off in terms of not opening up. So I tended to reflect on that, moderate myself, because the important thing in organization, the mainstream, is the live wire of an organization is communication. Right. So if you don't create an environment where people feel trusted and have the freedom to communicate openly what they have in mind, then we are not going to tap into the potential of the biggest asset that we have in an organization. So I feel open, transparent communication is of essence, and you need to create an environment where you walk the talk. Right. You can't just preach something and do something else, and that's something is very critical.
You've almost answered my next question, which was going to be on communication, really.
Yeah, right, okay.
So as a leader, how important is communication?
Very, very, because as a leader, I always say that if you look at Lee Kuan Yew or Mahatma Gandhi, a lot of people think leadership is based on a title, a position, and I am not subservient to that, and I don't believe in that, because leadership is all about the followership that you create. Not in terms of kind of you being put on a pedestal, but in terms of your thoughts, in terms of what you feel you could show in terms of vision, in terms of future, and a shared vision where people buy into, right? And that means that you got to communicate quite widely and quite deeply to each of the constituents of an organization, which is the daunting task. Because a lot of the people, I think, fail because they have good ideas, but they don't communicate to the stakeholders or to their people effectively. And hence, people tend to have a very loose grip in terms of the organization, where it's going, lack of passion. And a lot of the symptoms in terms of organization not progressing is I would mainly attribute to communication, which is probably the biggest issue in the from the Eastern Bloc compared to the Western, where they are very, very good in communication and they are probably taught and asked to exhibit that from young age. And from a Sri Lankan context, I think culture plays a huge role, I feel, in communicating handicap, because we are taught in schools not to challenge elders, superiors, right?
Yeah.
But I am of the view that's not a mantra which will work in the corporate environment, because today you have to let even, the youngest guy come and challenge you as a CEO, and you should be comfortable with it, because these guys come with the latest knowledge base, where what we've learned is kind of no use other than the experience and probably the other stuff that we can probably inculcate in them.
Yeah. In terms of, because you mentioned earlier, Ramesh, that you believe in this mantra of playing hard and working hard. So during your spare time, do you do anything special? Or?
Yep, I love to travel a lot, read a lot, enjoy music, go partying, go clubbing. So because I believe that ultimately, if you don't balance your stress out, you're going to get burnt out. So you need to take time to chill out, do stuff. I hit the gym twice a week, so that it is easy on you. So you can't do a CEO's job or a high stressful leadership role, not having time for yourself. So it's important to take time and enjoy life, because otherwise it becomes quite stressful.
Right.
Doing that role as well.
Right. In terms of our audience who's basically watching this program, what are the lessons you would like to share with them in terms of your own journey? And
one of the main things that I've learned, never plan your career. When I say never plan your career, not into greater detail, because I had these blinkers on when I came into John to say this is what my set career has to be. And in 2005, when Susanta was taking on as shaman, Susanta Ajit Rani just called me and said, "Hey, we want you to take this CI role." My knee-jerk reaction is, "Hey, this is not even in my career path. What are you talking about?" So, I got a huge dose in terms of, who plans careers, and this is a kind of fantastic opportunity you're throwing away. Look at it. So I just went back, took a couple of days, reflected on it, and then I thought, ultimately, a career is something that what you make out of, not based on designations. And sometimes it's like that's why I said, like playing sports. Sometimes when you are charging in rugby, you have to sidestep, right? So sometimes you have to sidestep in careers as well. So one of my key learnings is not to have a hard-coded thing in terms of a career. Second thing is always develop yourself. Never think that whatever you learn is going to go in vain. Learn new things, and also hire better people, right? Because ultimately, the people whom you surround yourself will make you successful. And if you don't hire better people than yourself, you're obviously going to have a aging and a dying organization. The third one is in terms of create that environment where people feel, because most of us spend more time at work than at home, and we have to create an environment which people feel kind of attached to, proud about, passionate about, and they're at home, right? You have to create that feeling. So which is something that you have to do, like being a parent, right? You obviously sometimes have to be tough, but for the betterment of the family. So in organizations also, you got to be tough, but you got to be flexible. You got to be moderate, so to speak, in terms of understanding people where they're coming from and empathize with them. And a lot of the times, I think that's the probably the biggest terminology which gets thrown us out today in terms of emotional intelligence, and whether we relate to people in terms of who they are actually. outside office and how what makes them tick.
All right.
So overall, I would think uh, if I'm to summarize that, definitely look at career as a evolving thing. Organizations always will give you opportunities. Navigate your career around it or through that maze. Play to your strengths. Complement your weaknesses by hiring the people who can complement you in those peers. And always challenge the status quo, push the boundaries. Never say anything is beyond you, uh, and keep learning and keep pushing the boundaries.
Ramesh, I want to pick something that you mentioned, which was basically you said, keeping yourself motivated
Yeah.
and inspired. So, is this something that would be of value to people also who are climbing the corporate ladder?
Definitely.
To keep
Yeah.
themselves motivated. And
Definitely, because I think even when I interview people, I push them to answer one of two questions. One is, what are the key strengths that you bring to the table, and what would you put down as your key learning areas, right? Most of the people will go rattling on about at least 7, 8 things in terms of what am I good at, but what am I not good at, or what are my learning outcomes. They will find it very, very difficult to put that down, because very seldom we sit and reflect in terms of what are those things that we could improve for ourselves, right? So, in keeping yourself motivated or keeping yourself or pushing the boundaries, that's a key ingredient for me, right? Because if it's something that I feel that I need to learn to do my job better, keeps me or pushes me towards another area of expertise. Now, if you look at when I became CIO of John Keel's, SAP was totally alien to me, right? I've been in the solution space, SI space, and I know this is going to be one of the challenges in and one of the areas that I need to master if I'm to be a successful CIO for John Keel's, and that pushed me in terms of, because reading was one of the hobbies. It wasn't difficult for me to lash on my spare time to read up, and because ultimately then when you go and talk to your team, you need to be able to make sense, challenge them in a sensible way, not kind of in a way that they feel, hey, this guy is kind of off his back. So it's something that which needs to be put in context, and also then you need to bring on a flavor of the future and the vision, which is where the credibility comes to you, and you earn the credibility as a leader. That, hey, this guy is seeing something that we are not, right? So that's something that you can exhibit at any point in time. But today, even if you enter an organization as a programmer or as a consultant or whatever, you have to look at what's happening around you and where is that I can add value and highlight myself, right? So that's for youngsters. My advice would be to always create a brand for yourself earlier on. What's your DNA? Make it known. Don't just be another body in an organization. But then obviously you will obviously then become mediocre and you just become part of a pack. So you always have to. I'm not saying do it in a bad way of kind of just highlighting and selling yourself at the expense of others, but look at it in a meaningful way, adding value to the team and then highlighting the team and ensuring that the organization gets propped up. If the organization grows, you grow. So that applies from the PM to the CEO.
Thank you very much, Ramesh.
Thanks, Vikti, for having me here.
And sharing some valuable thoughts with our audience who are aspiring to become a CEO like you. With that, we'll leave this particular program where we talked about the experiences of Mr. Ramesh Shanmuganathan, formerly CEO of Keel's Business Systems Limited and now CIO of the John Keel's Group, where he shared with us his mantra, his experiences in rising to the top of his organization. So until we meet again at another episode of a CEO Story, do good and rise